I'm laughing at myself here. I had some lunch and I ran a little late. So hopefully you can hear me. And so, yeah, throw something in the comment there that just says you can hear me. And that'll be super duper helpful. And I'm going to check one other thing here. I need to pull out one little thing. Boom, boom. And doing 2 of these a day is, generally pretty easy. So today we're going to talk about, so let's talk about today's subject so that you can know what's going on. So we're going to talk about solo and mute, and I see this all the time that with multi-track DAWs, there's this myth out there that if you use a single-track DAW, it's so much easier. I always think, gee, really? That means you're in charge of version control. You're in charge of saving. So if someone were to use a Twisted Wave or a Audacity, they may have to save out a WAV file of their own to have it independent. And the more advanced DAWs, all the fragments that you record are saved in the background as WAV files. There's huge advantages to that. You can have something that's very simple and have a single track within a multi-track DAW, and you can operate it as the same as a single. And then when you need it, if you're doing voiceover, if you're doing audiobooks, it's great to have multiple tracks because you can get some benefits in terms of version control, in terms of when you do revisions, it's much easier if you can do it all in one track. When you need safety in terms of autosaves and some other things, you win. And the one thing that I see, and I'm just going to show off some things here just so that it's easier, is that having a multi-track DAW is a win for you. Okay, I'm gonna put this, let me rearrange some Windows stuff here. I can get this out of the way, make it a little cleaner, pull this over here. By the way, I hide the OBS microphone things right underneath my picture there so that I can see it right on my desktop. It's easy. And then, but then if you have multi-track DAWs, you have this solo and mute stuff going on. And people sometimes take that and they don't realize that there are easy ways to manage that. And so because they don't, they just don't know. It's okay. If they haven't worked with it, they don't know. And I'll see this same thing that occurs all the time, which is they go ahead and they think in order to listen to a track, they need to press this little solo button. And you don't. You can. So can you? Yes. Should you? Maybe. Do you have to? No. There are different options, different ways of doing it. And if I'm working music, I have a totally different workflow simply because the complexity is totally different. There, I may have 8 tracks. That would be at a minimum, but you're more likely to have 30 tracks if you're working music because you're going to have all sorts of like if I pull the demo songs, which I haven't looked at in months, but if I ever were to pull one of those, I wonder if I even have those on my machine. I don't even know if I do have those. I'd have to go look at the demo songs and try to open it and see because I don't even remember. Demos, Studio One. Oh, it's zipped. Oh, look at that. That's zipped. Wow, that might. Yeah. I can't open it that way. So I'd have to unzip them and get all the demos, and you'd just see. It's just crazy number of tracks. But you don't need to do that. And so here's what happens. If you want, you can have a template set up. I wonder if I have one set up here. I'm going to find out. Single track example. I set up an example one time where I just thought, hey, I want a single track. If I would like one of the more advanced DAWs, you can do this in Reaper. You can do this in Studio One. You can do this in Audition. You can have a single track set up if you want the simplicity of a single track. And then you can have the features and some backups and some really great tools that'll serve you. Plus, so I go, now I have a single track DAW. As far as it looks like a single track, I only have one thing to look at, and I don't have a lot of complexity on the screen. It's already set up to do things for me because a template that if you have Canva, if anybody has Canva, what you already know is that Canva has templates. The reason I can do something simple like this, like I stole this graphic here, this template here, and I made this other one. Is it beautiful? We could argue about that. You can go, no, you're a terrible designer. Yes, I am. I don't, nobody's hiring me to do graphic design work, but I can take a template. And what did I do? I queried for templates and I scrolled through a list of templates and I found one that seemed reasonable to me and I changed the background. If you look at the original one, it was just blue. If I add this, I'll add as a new page. This was the original one, and I realized, oh, I can change out the background, and I can take this, and the one down below here in Canva became the one up above. I can make that a little bigger so you can see it. But I mean, it already had this little live graphic here. I made it bigger. I moved a couple things around, not many. I used the colors. I changed the sizes. I added some. It's like, okay, I can do that. It's not brain surgery, but if you have templates, you can be a decent graphic designer. No one's hired me to be a pro. No one really cares that much, but I can grab one of these and start with it, and I can have, I don't know, 80%, 90% done, and then I can change it. And is it perfect? No. Is it what somebody, if I task them and sent them a couple $100, or might be more, might be less, I don't really know, then they could do this and they could find something better. But here's the dirty secret. Most of these people if you're a graphics pro, you've already got your own custom templates that you've created and variations on them. And you know how to take this one right here and make it something that looks totally custom, because you might change the background here, and instead of whatever color they chose here on the background, I go over here, and now look at that. It looks kind of different, okay? So, yeah. And I could change out this photo, whatever. Point being, templates are your friends. I can make a simple DAW look more complicated. I can make a more advanced DAW look simpler if I choose. And of course, if you have macros and buttons, then you can go ahead and have a bunch of shortcuts there. So anyway, don't let anybody, there's this myth out there, oh, a single track DAW is just easier. And then all those people that do most of the people that recommend a single track DAW, they then have to switch to another DAW in order to do certain things. If you get a voiceover project that needs a music background or a sound effect background, then they end up going to something else. It's just a lot easier to stay in one DAW and use a template, so that you have a single track if you choose to have one, and you have multiple tracks when you need them. Plus, there's safety advantages with the more advanced DAWs. But I also want to talk about solo and mute, because I see this come up all the time, and I find it interesting. Let me see if I can find, okay. So I have a couple tracks here. I'll duplicate this just so it's longer. So now yellow track has a couple things, and it's longer. But I use multiple tracks in order to have different versions. I have a completely raw version up here, which does have tools in the background, so it's completely raw on the track. But when I export it, it has all the tools. I can get fully mastered audio on the first export, so that's pretty cool. And that's just some things that are happening in the background there. And each track can have its own rack and tools, which are helpful. But it's all pre-set up. And the great thing about it is, if I want, I'm going to take this whole thing and I'll duplicate it so that I have more tracks and more complexity. Maybe as the project gets bigger. I know I have a big project here. I go back and find one of mine. I have something called demo. That's not it. That's not it. I know I have this one that's pretty crazy, and I'll just show you. As it gets crazy, it's something self-driving fun. Let's see if that's it. Yeah, let's see if that's it. This one, I'm gonna hide this, and let me see if I go into. Nope, this one's only has a couple tracks. See that? 2 tracks. This was the raw track. This was the track that had gone through RX, and they're both in one. Whenever I need to see it, I can go back through that. Now I also know that I have one that's just kind of crazy. If I could find it there. And I'm going to scan real quick. Oh, let's try this. Let's try this the other way. Missile. Aha, look at that. Let's try this one. I should have just, hey, okay, there we go. Look at all this complexity. Lots of stuff going on, okay? Too much stuff. Crazy. But here's the beauty of this. There is a little cupboard here that when I open it, you see all these white dots here? They have the tools. I'm going to click once and drag down, and now I'm back to a single track. Actually, I have a video track here, so I would have to go ahead and close the video track if I want. But this project also had video with it, so that if I wanted to see, because I was voicing to a video, and because of that, there's some complexity there. But I certainly can go ahead and close the video track, and now with a couple clicks, I'm back to a simple looking track. And what I would do is, while I'm working on it, but I'm going to open this all back up again, I'm clicking and dragging, and if I take and make them all the exact same height, I'll use one feature here. All those tracks are the same height. With a single click, I got them all to the same height. You can see I have a bunch of tracks there. There's 15 tracks. And people sometimes will use solo and mute in order to decide what they want to listen to. Now, some people believe on the more advanced DAWs that you must solo a track in order to play it. And really, the reality is anything unmuted will play. And then furthermore, the more advanced DAWs have all these drag and drop operations that people don't know about. And that once you do, it's like, is that easy? Watch this. I'm clicking once and dragging down, and I just unmuted everything. I'm clicking once and dragging down, and I just muted everything. Did you notice all those M's lit up, meaning I'm muting that track. With a click, drag, one time, I could do subsets, click, drag up and unmute some, click, drag down and mute a set. So you can do those kind of things. And this is the way I do it. I have everything muted. Click, drag down all at once. There's other ways I could do that, because I also could select all of them and then I can mute them all as a group, or unmute them all as a group. And what I end up doing is, rather than going through, which I can do here, is go through and have a single track and I can solo it. I will do that occasionally if I'm doing complex things. I can do groups and solo them as a group. If you're doing music things, sometimes you need to do that, where it's like, I want to listen to all the drums tracks all together. I want to listen to the bass and drums all together. So you can set up a group of things that all solo as a team. You can do some really complicated stuff that we don't need to do. But I don't do that. I don't even solo it. What I do is I unmute the track that I want, and then I go ahead and I listen to that track. And anything that's unmuted, I can listen to. Now, that works for the 95% cases where I'm listening to one track at a time, and I might listen to this track, and I might go down and listen to this track. I pick a track, I can listen to it. There are occasions where I want to use solo, and I will actually go, that's one of my music files. Let me go ahead and clear this guy, go to my pinned group. I have something that has 100 songs on it. And I use this when I'm doing voiceovers. When I'm using voiceovers, I need to go through and I'll give you an idea how crazy this one is. So that one has 103 songs on it. So it has 103 songs on it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, let me make them all kind of a reasonable size here. I'll just drag them. There they are. And when I'm looking for the right type of music for something, then I just start it here at the beginning. I might have it looping, and I have it set up. You'll see I go through here. If I scroll all the way down, that one's soloed. And there's a feature in the more advanced DAWs that do things like this. There is a button here, a checkbox called Solo Follows Selection. What does that mean? When that is checked, then when I click on a file, it automatically When I click on a track, it automatically solos that one. Now, I could have done the same sort of thing by muting them all and simply unmuting, but then it doesn't toggle. So the beauty of this function when you need it is when it's on, any track that I highlight will automatically solo and unmute, and everything else is muted. If you look through that whole thing, they're all muted. So this is why, once somebody understands this, it's just super easy. I'm not usually dealing with 100 tracks. That's kind of crazy. I'm going to deal with a subset of those. Let's go down and then now, if I want to listen, so let me see. So I'm not going to try to talk over these. What I'm going to do is, you're just going to see, as I'm playing, I can switch between these, and I know from using these a while. So in other words, hey, I can solo a track and have it set up to solo, and as I click around on each track, it automatically unsolos. It's when you have the idea. When I need simplicity, when you need simplicity, you can set it up and you can just go ahead and have a single track, and that's all that's there. And everything works there, and it's great. And behind the scenes, they're all stored in separate WAV files, so there's safety, there's autosaves, there's a bunch of other advantages. If you get into things that are more complicated and you need more tracks, you don't need to go through and use solo. You can mute everything. That's what I do. And then I unmute the one that I'm working on. And a lot of times I'm working on one track for an extended period of time. If I want to audit some different ones, then I can go ahead and I can set it up, and then which I have one track soloed and everything else isn't. And then, of course, the more advanced DAWs, often, this comes up often. So see, there's even a cursor here, this speaker, and watch what happens here. I can go any place on any of these tracks, and now it's playing whatever track I hover over, and I can just take my mouse and listen to whatever track is there and whatever part of the track I want with this little speaker icon. I can go and find it. So I like this song. There are commercials around America that have that song because my wife's and I mean, I just have this is a subset. By the way, I have about 500 songs that I've downloaded from my download service. I have a royalty-free service that I've subscribed to for about 5 years. And I listen about once every few months. I'll go on and find stuff, and if I like it, then I'll grab it and I keep it in my collection. But you see, I'm not managing all these solos and unsolos. I can use the listen tool if I want to. Then it's kind of independent of what I have going there. So all your more advanced DAWs, if they're doing their job, they have shortcuts to everything. And you do not need to go through if we're doing a voiceover one, I don't need all that complexity. I'm going to have a couple tracks. I'm going to have my raw track. I'm going to have my process track. I may have a revision track. I may have delivered it twice because they asked for a revision, and rather than I keep the old one. I don't delete it. I don't overwrite it. I just make a copy. And of course, making copies of tracks when you need to try alternate versions, or, hey, what do you think if we tried it this way? Sometimes I'm sending clients multiple versions because they specify. I had one yesterday. We're voicing this thing, and there was a note. It was an animation thing. So I was two of the characters animation. My wife was two of the characters for an animation thing. And in the script, it had something where she said, gee, shouldn't we add this one word because of the description there? We're like, I don't know what they're really animating. We didn't have, in this case, the animation. But it made sense to us in one spot to add one word, another spot to add a couple. So we gave them an alternate version that had what we thought was right, and they were really happy with that. And we gave them what they exactly as the script was, and then we gave them an alternate version. And we should have two versions showing on ours in case they came back and said, hey, do a revision. We could pick whichever one. We label them, some other things like that. Multi-track DAWs are a win for you. Multi-track DAWs can be as simple as the single tracks, and the more advanced DAWs have all these little built-in shortcuts that at first you won't know about. But if you drive a brand new car, it may have a cup holder or someplace that you don't know about at first. If you get a new car, it might have a more advanced, not autopilot. Well, some of them do have autopilots now, but the speed control. What are those called? I can't think of what those are called. Okay. And so you end up with details in a car that the first time you get it, maybe you don't know about it. Maybe there's something special in the glove box where they have a little something that you go, oh, that's clever. Maybe there's a cup holder that's hidden and you don't know about it. And later you have somebody in the car and they find something and they go, oh, that's nice. Or heated seats and cooled seats, and you didn't realize there's all sorts of little details and something more modern and makes life easier. Okay. So by the way, so yes, I do. So musical Neptunian cruise control. Thank you. Thanks. Very good. Cruise control. I couldn't come up with that word. So by the way, so some cruise controls now, many of them, the modern ones, they have what they call adaptive cruise control. And all that means, if the car in front of me slows down, like say we were both going 60 miles an hour and I had set my cruise control, if I get I come up on a car, then the adaptive ones will go, I'm not going to get within 20 yards. I don't know what it is, some distance, and I'm going to slow down rather than just keep on going and running into the back of another car. They adapt if something gets in your lane, and they do that automatically. All the more advanced DAWs have all these little features. Now, at first, nobody appreciates the adaptive cruise control. They don't know about it. And if you've never had it before, the first time it kicks in, you're like, whoa, what just happened there? I didn't do anything, and it slowed down. And then that car gets out of the way, or that truck gets out of the way into a different lane, and you have a brand new open, your lane becomes totally open in front of you, then the car slowly speeds back up to whatever you had set it to. So that's the modern DAWs. They do things for you. And solo and mute, I just see people all the time that even on simple projects, before they listen to anything, they are going ahead and they are soloing this one to listen to it when they don't need to. Okay, you can have everything set up, and now that works. Now that works, and I just switch between them. Okay, I can have it set up that whatever my active one is, then it automatically solos that. I just don't. I have other tools that will do it. That if I click on this,
Feedback utilization
it will
position.
play whatever track I'm on without doing any changes here. So there are other ways to do it, and the more advanced tools do it. Just don't let anybody tell you single track DAWs is the big winner. It makes your life easier. It really doesn't, because the more advanced features pay off over time. On day one, yeah, the simpler DAWs, just have less complexity. But assuming you're going to be a pro, assuming you're going to use your tools, if you get an Instapot because you're going to cook all the time, then having the ability to have some presets and then be able to make your own is a win. If it's your first Instapot, you may want to do it manually and start understanding it, or just press the buttons and not understand it. It's a big win. But I do see people making this one mistake, or I wouldn't consider it a mistake, this one workflow that they have, that they're used to always soloing whatever they want to play. And I just do it the opposite. Okay. Am I right? Not necessarily. I could make the case for either, but I do prefer. And then because there are also times where I'm going to solo as a group, and that's a more advanced thing. And I'm not going over that here, but if I wanted to do it, if I wanted to have all my drum tracks, or I had voiceover and music, and I wanted to have them play as a team soloed. So there's this concept of a group solo, and you can solo one track, 50 tracks together all as once and exclude other tracks. You can set up some pretty complex, cool things, but way beyond this. All right. On Reaper, I run a separate track of unaltered room tone on the main track in case dialogue isolate does too good of a job. Yeah, that'll work. That works great. So Larry, let me highlight that. So Larry's talking about the fact that he has some room tone beneath the main track. I mean, I like that. I'm not, first off, that'll also put it behind the rest of it. Usually it's quiet enough, it doesn't really matter. It gets masked, so it's a non-issue. But depending on what's going on, you can have additive. So I'm not, you know, that shouldn't be needed. If you're running dialogue isolate properly, in my mind, you shouldn't need to run that. You could do that in Studio One. Yes, I mean, you can do that. You can do that in all the DAWs. All the more advanced DAWs. You could absolutely do it in Reaper. You could absolutely do it in Studio One. But the reality is, I also, having done tens of thousands of files in RX, I don't need to have. I can get the room tone right in there without having to have it also there. But that works. Absolutely works. Okay. And I'll bet your audio sounds great doing that. So no one will know. And that'll work fantastic. But multi-tracks do come in handy, because you can be sophisticated like Larry, and you can take something that other people aren't thinking about. And what he can do is a super cool thing, which is he could strip out all the background noise, or the vast majority of the background noise, and his room tone track will go ahead and be a win for him because it gets mixed together. And so there just are a lot of different options that make that great, and having multiple tracks are a win. Okay, I just thought my only pushback is that I see people recommending a single track DAWs if it's superior, and I always think anything you can do in a single track DAW, you could set this up to be so simple that it's crazy if you chose to do that. And when you have a multi-track DAW, I think it's way more work when you get to that stage. Like, let's say you run a single track DAW for 2 months, and then now you need to add music to a project. Now you either have to learn something else, and then you're starting all over. If you know one tool really well, it's just easier, and you learn things from using tools consistently, day after day after day after day. I'll take somebody that knows Audacity at the expert level. That's easier than somebody who doesn't know any of them very well, or switches back and forth between all of them. And yeah, I know most of them pretty well, but there are things you learn about, and it'd be if you're dating somebody. If you're dating somebody and you see them once a week, they're on their best behavior. They always, everything looks good, I guess. But if you see them every day, then hey, that guy doesn't put his socks away. What an idiot, or whatever your pet peeve is. You find out that, hey, they have flaws too. And you learn their strengths, you learn their weaknesses. You also see that, how do they respond when something doesn't work right? Do they have a good attitude about it? And your dog can have a good attitude or a bad attitude about stuff that didn't work the way you expected. Okay. So, and still, oh yeah. So dialogue isolate. And also, Larry, depending on the type of noise that you have, Larry says he's still experimenting with dialogue isolate, since this is VO Tech Simplified. Dialogue isolate, you certainly can strip too much out of, and depending on what it is, there are times when I'll be using spectral denoise, there are times where I'll be using voice denoise, and absolutely there are times where I am using dialogue isolate. If I'm in my own studio, though, I shouldn't have. I don't. I don't remember in somebody's good studio needing to use dialogue isolate. I have used it when people are on the road, if people are in hotels, if they're in changing situations. That tool is absolutely awesome. In your own place, I usually spectral denoise, voice denoise are more than sufficient if you have a reasonably well-treated room. And then if you have other things, then okay, you may have to use dialogue isolate, but I'm not really going to be doing it on a day-by-day basis in somebody who has a well-treated room. I just don't really need to. I love having the tool because it gives us an option. It's still not something I'm going to use on a daily basis. All right. So, get rid of aggressive AC sound. Yep. It'll do that. There's no question about it that dialogue isolate can get rid of AC, but so can by the way, I've taken it out hundreds of times with spectral denoise as well. So I love having both. It's great. I'm really a big fan of RX11. I like dialogue isolate. I think it's given us a tool to manage situations that were very difficult to manage before, and it does a great job with them. Combined with the other tools, you can do some other things. I also like 100% of the time on my input, I have a high pass filter that is always set up on everything in terms of input on the way in, because assuming this is assuming voice. Don't, if we're talking music or other things, then that's not the case. But I'm always stripping out before I ever record things that are below my voice frequencies. I don't see any. I used to be a purist. I'd only do it after. Now I do it on the way in, because otherwise, when I'm measuring, if I've measured something before I've done the noise reduction, then that noise in the low end can influence what I think my track is in terms of its total volume. And if I just have a bunch of low end rumble that no one's going to get stripped out at some point, I just strip it out right at the beginning. And that's a change for me over the last few years. I used to just never take out any of that stuff up front. Today I do it regularly. I have an air conditioner running today. You probably can hear that over the whatever this is over YouTube, but that's life. It's almost 100 degrees here in SoCal. So, but I will say Larry is 100% right. I've taken out an amazing amount of air conditioner and in hotels where you don't have control. But if it's a steady state sound, spectral denoise also is brilliant about taking that stuff out as well. Okay, so there's a lot of options. You have options, and that's what we want to have, our good options that don't get in our way and can do the job, and we still want to sound great. And at the end of the day, I want you to sound like you're totally unprocessed. I don't want anyone to know there was an air conditioner in there. I don't want anyone to know I've run a compressor. All I want them is to go, wow, Larry sounds fantastic. They shouldn't know that there's a compressor running. They shouldn't know that a limiter kicked in at some point for an odd peak that's in there, or a set of peaks that are in there. They just so Larry sounds fantastic, and that's what the whole thing is about. And a multi-track DAW makes your life easier from an organizational point of view and a recording point of view. And they tend to have some safety features built in that are not available on the single track DAWs. It's crazy, all the little things. So just don't let someone tell you, oh, single track is easier. It's easier on day one, maybe. And then you go to do something, and then now you have to add another DAW. And so a lot of these people are managing 2 DAWs. One DAW for their complex projects, one DAW for their everyday. And it's like, if you have the right template, you can manage them all on one tool, and it's easier. And also, when you do the same thing over and over again, you're pretty darn good at it. All right, let's talk about. So, honestly, anybody, if you have a question, be sure to ask it quick here. This one's going to be shorter than if we can pull that off. And I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like this. Be sure to pass it to other people. If you have something that you want to talk about, be sure to send me a message so that I can put it on there. I just saw some people talking about soloing stuff, and I just realized, yeah, you don't usually need to do that, or I just never do it. It's a valid workflow, but it's not needed by most people. All right. Hope you have a great one. If I can help, see you in the groups. And as always, I'm excited about seeing you on the wires. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.